Here's 3 things that you should never do with your axe that I see a lot of people doing, and it's time to stop. The first thing you should never do with an axe is striking the pole, whether you're hitting a wedge with it or using the actual axe as a wedge. I see people do this a lot, and it can really damage your axe. Some people will put wedges in wood and hit it with the pole of the axe, and some people might put the axe in the wood and hit that with a hammer. Now that's a problem because not all axes, but most axes, the bit is the only hardened part, the front, the cutting edge, okay, where your eye and pole are not hardened. Now if you hit objects with it, and a lot of times mostly metal, you will mushroom out the back and you can damage the eye. If you've ever seen an axe where the back looks like it's mushrooming out, that's because someone's been hitting it on a wedge or with a hammer. If you want an example of something you can hit a wedge with or use as a hammer, this is a splitting maul made for splitting large rounds, and the rear is actually a hammer, as you could see. This is actually made for hitting wedges. So you should not use a normal axe to hit wedges or you will destroy your axe. The next thing you should never do with an axe is driving your edge into the ground. Now it seems pretty self-explanatory, but let me explain. You should be using a chopping block of some sort. Usually this is just going to be a large round of wood that you put the smaller piece of wood on. Now not only does it put the wood at a better angle for chopping and make it just safer all around, the ground absorbs a lot of impact from the chop and you won't get a nice split as much as you would on a chopping block. But that's not the only reason. Another reason is not hitting the axe head into the ground. The ground has rocks in it which will absolutely destroy your edge. Also, dirt itself is very abrasive. So when you split through the wood and your edge drives into the ground, you're going to destroy your edge. So you should always use a chopping block so that the axe is hitting the wood after the chop, or if you miss. Now going with that, you should also have a sheath for your axe of some sort, whether it's Kydex or leather. You want to protect that edge, considering you spend all that time keeping it sharp. The third thing you should never do with your axe is splitting a piece of wood while you're holding the piece of wood. Again, that sounds pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of people actually do that. Now the times that people do this the most are when they're splitting kindling usually. A lot of people do this method. They'll hold the piece of wood and they'll just chop like this. Chop the kindling. Obviously they'll chop harder. I'm not actually going to do it because I don't want to chop my fingers off, but they'll hold the piece of wood and they'll chop their kindling like that. And the problem with that is quite obvious. You make a mistake and you're going to come down right on your finger. That's how you lose a finger, and people have lost their fingers or got injured that way. Another thing people do is if a piece of wood isn't standing up all the way, like this piece of wood doesn't stand up all the way, it does on that end, but just imagine it, it's not standing up the right way, or you got a piece like this and you can't stand it up and you want to get it smaller for kindling. People will hold it, get a chop started, and then chop through it. Now that's a problem because, again, your fingers are right there. You make one mistake and that's bad news for your fingers, okay? So you should never ever hold the piece of wood while you're chopping it. I know there's going to be people saying that they've been splitting kindling that way for 15 years. I actually saw on video comments that someone said they've been splitting kindling that way for 15 years. Well, that just means for 15 years you've gotten lucky. One time you get tired, you make a little mistake, then you're going to chop your fingers and it's not going to be a good day. So just never hold the piece of wood while you chop. If the wood's not standing up, there's methods where you could just lay it down and then chop it from that way, like that. Okay, you could baton it with a knife. There's a lot of things you can do instead of holding the piece of wood. Well guys, that's 3 things that I see people doing with axes and hatchets, and I think it's better if we all just stop doing those. Go ahead and share things that you've seen people doing with axes that you don't like to see. Go ahead and like this video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.